The throne room of the Valorian Empire sparkled with blue crystal walls, but King Vexthor saw only darkness ahead. He sat on his ancient seat, watching the holographic display show another lost battle. Red markers spread across the star map like a disease. The Krell were winning, and his people were dying. Princess Lyra stood beside her father, her silver skin paler than usual. She was 20 cycles old, young by Valorian standards, and so much smaller than other females of her kind. Where Valorian warriors stood 8 feet tall with bodies that crackled with natural energy, Lyra barely reached 6 feet. Her arms were thin, her energy signature weak and flickering. "Father, let me try the trials again," Lyra said, her voice soft but determined. "I can fight for our people." The king's face showed deep sadness. 3 months ago, Lyra had attempted the warrior trials. She had collapsed after the first physical test, unable to channel enough energy to lift the ceremonial stone. The court had whispered about the weak princess ever since. Some said it was a curse. Others claimed she brought shame to the royal bloodline. "My daughter, your heart is strong, but your body betrays you," Vexthor said. He touched her hand gently. "The physicians say your energy channels are damaged. You cannot fight as our people fight." Lyra pulled her hand away, tears forming in her violet eyes. "Then I am useless to you, useless to everyone." She ran from the throne room before her father could respond. The king watched her go, his heart breaking. He had already lost his son to the war. He could not bear to lose his daughter to despair. An advisor approached the throne, his ceremonial robes sweeping the crystal floor. "My king, the human delegation has arrived, the one you sent for." Vexthor straightened in his seat. "Send him in." The doors opened, and a human walked into the throne room. He was small by Valorian standards, barely over 6 feet tall. He wore simple clothes, not armor or ceremonial dress. His brown hair was cut short, and his eyes were sharp and calculating. This was Jake Morrison, a human who had trained soldiers across 3 star systems. "King Vexthor," Jake said, bowing slightly, "you asked me to come a long way. I hope it's worth the trip." "You trained the Kethian Defense Force," the king said. "They were peaceful farmers before you arrived. Now they hold their borders against raiders twice their size. How did you do this?" Jake shrugged. "I taught them to fight like humans. We're not the biggest or strongest species in the galaxy. We don't have natural weapons or energy powers. We just don't quit. We train harder, think smarter, and keep getting back up." The king leaned forward. "Could you teach my people this human way?" "Maybe," Jake said carefully. "But I've seen your warriors. They rely on their energy powers too much. They'd have to learn a completely different approach. That's not easy for soldiers who've trained one way their whole lives." Vexthor stood, his massive frame towering over the human. "I do not wish you to train my warriors. I have something else in mind, something more important." He activated another hologram. Lyra appeared, showing her collapse during the trials. Jake watched quietly as the princess fell, her body unable to handle the physical demands. "My daughter," Vexthor said, his voice heavy with pain. "She is brilliant, brave, and kind. But by our standards, she is broken. Our physicians cannot help her. Our training masters have given up. But I see her spirit, and I wonder if perhaps she is not weak. Perhaps she is simply not meant to be a Valorian warrior." Jake studied the image. "You want me to train her?" "More than that." The king's voice dropped low. "I give her to you. Take her to the human worlds. Make her strong in the human way. If you succeed, you will have the gratitude of an empire. If you fail, at least she will have tried something new. Here, she has only shame and pity." Jake was quiet for a long moment. "That's a lot of trust to put in a stranger." "I have watched you, Jake Morrison. I know you were a soldier before you were a teacher. I know you lost your entire unit in battle and carry that weight every day. I know you take impossible jobs because you need to prove you can save people you could not save before. Vexthor's eyes met his. I am a father asking another warrior to save what matters most, not for glory or payment, but because it is right. The human looked away, his jaw tight. The king's words had cut deep into old wounds. Finally, Jake nodded. I'll try, but she has to want this. I don't train anyone who isn't willing to bleed for it. She will agree, Vexthor said with certainty. She wants to matter, to be strong, to protect her people. You offer her a chance when everyone else offers only sympathy. Lyra was brought to the throne room. She looked confused and worried. When her father explained the proposal, her eyes went wide. Leave my home? Train with a human? She looked at Jake with uncertainty. I won't lie to you, Jake said, meeting her gaze directly. Human training is brutal. You'll fail 1,000 times before you succeed once. You'll hurt, you'll want to quit, and you'll hate me most days. But if you stick with it, I'll make you stronger than you ever imagined. Not stronger for a Valorian, just stronger. Lyra stood straighter. Despite her small frame and weak energy, something fierce burned in her eyes. When do we start? Tomorrow, Jake said. Pack light. Where we're going, you won't need royal gowns. As Lyra left to prepare, King Vexthor placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. Bring her back to me as a warrior, or bring her back happy. Either is more than I can give her here. Jake nodded once, then walked out to prepare for the journey. Behind him, the king returned to his throne, watching the war map and praying he had made the right choice. The Krell were still advancing. The empire was still crumbling. But for the first time in years, Vexthor felt a small spark of hope. His daughter was going to become something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. The desert heat hit Lyra like a physical blow. She stepped off the transport ship onto red sand that stretched endlessly in all directions. The human colony world called New Arizona was nothing like her green and blue homeworld. This place was harsh, dry, and unforgiving. Welcome to hell, Jake said, walking past her with a pack on his back. We'll be spending the next 6 months here. Lyra struggled to lift her own pack. It was heavy, much heavier than anything she'd carried before. Her thin arms shook with the effort. Jake watched her struggle but didn't help. Finally, she managed to hoist it onto her shoulders, nearly falling backward from the weight. Good, Jake said. First lesson, carry your own burden. No one else will do it for you. They walked for 2 hours to reach the training facility. It was just a simple building with some equipment scattered around. Lyra had expected something grand, like the warrior academies on her world. This looked like a shed with weights in it. A human woman waited for them at the entrance. She was shorter than Lyra, with dark hair tied back and kind eyes. You must be Princess Lyra. I'm Katie Bell, medic and nutritionist. I'll be helping adapt human training for your biology. Lyra tried to bow formally, but nearly fell over from the pack's weight. Katie caught her arm, steadying her. Easy there. Let's get that pack off you and run some tests. We need to understand how your body works before we break it. Over the next few days, Katie ran countless tests. She measured Lyra's strength, which was pathetic by human standards. She tested her endurance, which was even worse. She studied how Lyra's body processed food, stored energy, and recovered from exertion. Fascinating, Katie said one evening, showing Jake her results. Valorians evolved to use their natural energy manipulation for everything. Their muscles are underdeveloped because they never needed them. It's like if humans never learned to walk because we could float everywhere instead. Can we fix it? Jake asked. Maybe, but it'll hurt. Katie looked at Lyra, who sat exhausted in the corner. Her body has to learn to do things it was never designed to do. It's going to fight her every step of the way. The real training started the next morning. Jake woke Lyra before dawn. "We run," he said simply. "Run where?" Lyra asked, still half asleep. "Doesn't matter, just run." They started jogging across the desert. Lyra made it maybe 300 yards before her legs gave out. She collapsed into the sand, gasping for air. Her body burned with pain she'd never experienced before. Jake stopped and walked back to her. "Get up!" "I cannot," Lyra wheezed. "My body will not move." "Then crawl, but you're covering 5 miles this morning." "5 miles? I just failed at 300 yards. Jake knelt beside her. "Listen to me. You're thinking like a Valorian. You expect your body to just do things because you will it. That's not how humans work. We fail. We rest for 30 seconds and we try again. Then we fail again, rest again, try again. We don't succeed because we're naturally good at things. We succeed because we're too stubborn to stay down." Lyra looked at him with disbelief. "That sounds insane." "Welcome to humanity." Jake stood up. 30 seconds is up. On your feet." It took Lyra 4 hours to cover 5 miles that first day. She ran when she could, walked when she couldn't run, and crawled when she couldn't walk. Jake stayed with her the entire time, never helping, just being there. When she finally reached the marker that indicated 5 miles, she collapsed and cried. Not from sadness, but from sheer exhaustion and a strange feeling she couldn't name. Later, she would learn humans called it accomplishment. The training continued every day, running, lifting weights, climbing ropes, carrying heavy objects. Lyra failed at everything initially. Her Valorian body, built for energy manipulation, rebelled against this physical punishment. Her muscles screamed. Her joints ached. She threw up after almost every morning run. But something strange started happening after 3 weeks. The 5-mile run that took 4 hours now took 3, then 2.5. Her arms, once thin and weak, started showing definition. Her legs grew stronger. Katie adjusted her diet, feeding her more protein than Valorians usually ate. Her body started changing in ways that would shock any Valorian physician. Jake introduced her to combat training next. He started with basic punches and kicks. "Your people fight with energy blasts and telekinetic pushes," he explained. "That's great when it works. But what happens when you're drained? When your energy is depleted? Humans learned to fight with our bodies because we had no other choice." He taught her boxing first, how to throw a proper punch, how to move her feet, how to protect her face. Lyra was terrible at it. Jake's blocking pads would barely move when she hit them. But he was patient, correcting her form, showing her how to put her whole body into a punch. "It's not about muscle," Jake said. "It's about technique and leverage. A human half your size can knock someone out if they know how. It's physics, not magic." After boxing came other styles. Jake taught her Krav Maga, a human martial art focused on practical survival. He showed her pressure points on various alien species. He trained her with knives, staffs, and firearms. The guns fascinated Lyra. Valorians viewed weapons as beneath them, but Jake showed her that a well-placed shot could end a fight before it started. "Pride is expensive," Jake said. "It costs battles and lives. Humans learned that lesson hard. We use every advantage we can find." 3 months into training, Lyra completed her first 5-mile run without stopping. It took her 45 minutes, not amazing by human standards, but she didn't walk once. She didn't crawl. She just ran, steady and strong. When she finished, she found Jake waiting with a small smile. "Not bad, Princess." Lyra, drenched in sweat and breathing hard, smiled back. "I am not a princess here. Just Lyra." "Fair enough. Just Lyra. Tomorrow we double the distance." She groaned but didn't complain. Pain and exhaustion had become normal, expected, almost welcomed. Each day she felt herself becoming something different. Her reflection shocked her. Where once she had been soft and weak, now muscles moved under her silver skin. Her eyes held a harder edge. She stood differently, moved differently. Katie noticed the changes, too. Your body composition has shifted dramatically. You've gained muscle mass that shouldn't be possible for a Valorian female. You're becoming something unique. One night, Lyra sat outside the facility looking at the stars. Jake joined her with 2 water bottles. "Homesick?" he asked. "I received a message today," Lyra said quietly. "Another battle lost. More of my people dead. And I am here playing at being human." "You're not playing," Jake said firmly. "You're training. There's a difference, and when you go back, you'll go back as someone who can actually help them." Lyra turned to him. "Do you really believe I can become strong enough to matter?" Jake met her violet eyes with his brown ones. "I've watched you for 3 months. You've never quit, not once. That's stronger than any energy power. That's human strength, and it's more powerful than you know." Lyra nodded slowly, then returned her gaze to the stars. Somewhere out there, her father fought a losing war, but she wasn't ready yet, not nearly ready. Tomorrow she would run 10 miles, and the day after she would run them faster. 6 months of training had transformed Lyra into something the galaxy had never seen before. She stood in front of a mirror in the facility's gym, barely recognizing herself. Her body was lean and muscular, built from countless hours of running, lifting, and fighting. She had abs, actual visible abdominal muscles. No Valorian woman had ever developed such a physique. Jake walked into the gym carrying equipment. "Ready for today's session?" Lyra turned from the mirror. "What are we doing?" "Something new. You've mastered the basics of human combat. Now we combine it with your Valorian abilities. Time to stop thinking of them as separate things." This was the breakthrough Lyra had been waiting for. For months, she had trained purely physically, ignoring her natural energy manipulation. Jake had insisted she build a foundation first. Now, finally, he was ready to let her explore what happened when human technique met Valorian power. They went to the training yard. Jake had set up practice dummies made of reinforced materials. "Show me an energy blast." "Your basic Valorian attack." Lyra raised her hand and focused. A small bolt of purple energy shot from her palm, hitting a dummy and scorching it slightly. It was weak by Valorian standards, the kind of attack that had embarrassed her back home. "Again, but this time use your whole body, like throwing a punch. Put your legs into it, rotate your hips, follow through with your shoulder." Lyra tried it. She stepped forward like Jake had taught her, rotated her body, and released the energy with a punching motion. The blast was twice as strong, slamming into the dummy hard enough to knock it over. She stared at her hand in shock. That was stronger, much stronger. "Your people stand still when they use their powers," Jake said. "They think it's more dignified or refined, but power comes from your whole body working together. Every human athlete knows this. Now you do too." They spent hours experimenting. Lyra learned to channel energy through kicks, creating devastating strikes. She practiced infusing her punches with small energy bursts at the moment of impact. She discovered she could use tiny energy pulses to boost her speed, moving faster than any human or traditional Valorian. A voice called from the facility entrance. "Heard you were making super soldiers out here." A man approached, tall and confident. He wore a military uniform with instructor badges. This was Derek Hayes, another combat trainer who worked at a nearby facility. "Derek," Jake said coolly, "what brings you out here?" "Heard rumors about your alien pet project." Derek looked at Lyra with open skepticism. "Word is you're claiming she's ready for Human Special Forces certification. That's a bold claim for someone who couldn't handle basic Valorian training." Lyra felt her face flush with anger, but she controlled it. Jake had taught her that anger without discipline was useless. "She's not a pet project," Jake said. She's a student who's worked harder than anyone I've ever trained." Derek smirked. "Then she won't mind proving it. The endurance course, full gear, standard time limits. If she passes, I'll admit I was wrong. If she fails, you stop spreading nonsense about alien-human hybrid training." Jake looked at Lyra. "Your call. You don't have to prove anything to him." But Lyra stepped forward. "I accept." The endurance course was brutal by design. It was meant to test human soldiers to their absolute limits. 20 miles of running, climbing, crawling, and obstacle navigation while carrying 50 pounds of gear. There were walls to scale, ropes to climb, rivers to cross, and simulated combat scenarios throughout. Human soldiers trained for months just to attempt it, and the failure rate was over 60%. Lyra stood at the starting line 2 days later. Katie had checked her vital signs that morning and declared her fit. Jake had offered last-minute advice, but mostly just reminded her of what she'd already learned. A small crowd had gathered, including Derek and several human Marines who wanted to see if the alien princess could actually do it. The buzzer sounded. Lyra started running. The first 5 miles were the easiest, just running with the heavy pack. Lyra settled into the rhythm she'd practiced thousands of times. Her legs were strong now, her breathing controlled. She passed the 5-mile marker ahead of schedule. Then came the obstacles. A 15-foot wall with a rope. Lyra jumped, grabbed the rope, and climbed with arms that had pulled her body weight up thousands of times in training. She went over the top and dropped down the other side, rolling to absorb the impact like Jake had taught her. Crawling under barbed wire through mud. Swimming across a cold river with full gear. Climbing a rope bridge that swayed with every movement. Each obstacle tested different skills, and Lyra attacked them all with the same determination. She fell twice, once into mud and once into water, but she got back up immediately and kept moving. At mile 15, her body started screaming at her. Every muscle hurt. Her lungs burned. The pack felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. This was the wall that stopped most human soldiers. The point where the body said it couldn't continue. But Lyra had learned something during 6 months in the desert. The body was a liar. It said it was done long before it actually was. Jake had taught her to recognize this, to push past the false signals of exhaustion. She kept running. At mile 18, there was a combat simulation. Instructors in padded suits acted as enemies. Lyra had to defeat 3 of them to continue. They were human Marines, strong and well-trained. They expected her to try some fancy Valorian energy attack. Instead, Lyra used what Jake had taught her. She went low, sweeping the first Marine's legs. As he fell, she struck pressure points on his neck, the knockout spots Jake had drilled into her memory. The second Marine tried to grab her, but she slipped his grip, got behind him, and put him in a chokehold he couldn't escape. The third Marine actually landed a punch, making her head ring, but she rolled with it and countered with a combination of strikes that put him down. All 3 opponents down in less than a minute. The instructors watching made notes, looking impressed. The final 2 miles were pure willpower. Lyra's body was beyond exhausted. Her vision blurred. Her legs felt like rubber. But she'd learned something else from Jake. The mind controls the body, not the other way around. She focused on just the next step, then the next, then the next. When she crossed the finish line, the timer showed she'd completed the course in just under the maximum time limit. Not amazing, but a pass was a pass. She collapsed onto the ground, unable to stand. Katie rushed over with water and medical equipment. Jake knelt beside Lyra, a proud smile on his face. "You did it," he said simply. Derek approached, looking genuinely surprised. "I'll admit it. I was wrong. She's got what it takes." Lyra, still gasping for air, managed to speak. "That was horrible. When can I do it again to beat my time?" Jake laughed. "That's the spirit. But first you rest. Recovery is part of training." News of Lyra's achievement spread quickly. She became the first non-human to pass Human Special Forces certification. More importantly, she had proven that her hybrid approach worked. She wasn't trying to be a perfect human or a perfect Valorian. She was becoming something new. That evening, a message arrived from her father. The Krell had attacked a border colony. Valorian forces were barely holding. The Empire was running out of time. Lyra looked at Jake. "I need to go home. My people need me." Jake nodded. "I know. But there's one more thing to do first. Katie's been working on something special. Combat armor designed specifically for you. Combines human technology with systems that enhance your hybrid abilities. We'll have it ready in a week. And then? Then you go home and show them what you've become. Not a weak princess. Not a failed Valorian. Something new. Something strong." Lyra stood on shaky legs and looked at her reflection in the facility window. She saw a warrior looking back at her. Scarred, strong, ready. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you gave a determined person a chance to transform. The royal palace looked exactly as Lyra remembered it, but she felt like a completely different person walking through its crystal halls. She wore her new armor, a sleek design that combined human technology with Valorian energy systems. Jake walked beside her, and Katie followed with equipment cases. Palace guards stared at Lyra as she passed. They barely recognized her. The thin, frail princess they remembered had been replaced by a warrior with visible muscle and a confident stride. Whispers followed her every step. King Vexthor waited in the throne room. When the doors opened and he saw his daughter, his eyes widened. For a moment, he just stared. Then he rose from his throne and walked down to embrace her. "Lyra, is it truly you?" "It is, father." Lyra hugged him back, noting that she was now much stronger than the last time they'd embraced. "I have returned as you asked." "I am ready to fight." The king pulled back and looked at her armor, her changed physique, the new hardness in her eyes. "Jake Morrison, you have done what I thought impossible. You have made my daughter into a warrior." "She did that herself," Jake said. "I just showed her how." General Thalrex entered the throne room, the Empire's greatest military commander. He was massive even by Valorian standards, covered in ceremonial combat marks. His eyes dismissed Lyra immediately. "My king, we do not have time for celebrations. The Krell advance on 3 more worlds. We need strategies, not reunions with your daughter." "General, you will show respect," Vexthor said sharply. "My daughter has completed human military certification. She has trained in combat for a full year." Thalrex scoffed. "Human training? My king, with respect. Humans are weak. They have no natural powers, no energy manipulation. What could they possibly teach a Valorian about warfare?" Lyra stepped forward before her father could respond. "General Thalrex, I challenge you to single combat. If I win, you acknowledge that I am ready to serve the Empire. If you win, I will never speak of fighting again." The throne room went silent. Challenging the general was unthinkable, especially for someone who had failed the warrior trials so spectacularly a year ago. Thalrex laughed. "Princess, I do not wish to hurt you. Your father would be displeased." "I can handle pain," Lyra said calmly. "Can you handle being beaten by someone you consider weak?" The general's face darkened. "Very well. We duel in 1 hour. Traditional rules: first to yield or fall unconscious loses." The combat arena filled quickly. Word spread through the palace that Princess Lyra was challenging General Thalrex. Nobles, soldiers, and servants crowded the viewing platforms. Many came to watch the princess fail again. Some came hoping to see something different. Lyra stretched in her preparation room. Katie checked her armor systems while Jake reviewed strategy with her. "He's bigger, stronger, and has more energy reserves than you," Jake said. "Don't fight his fight, make him fight yours." "Use your speed," Katie added. "Your hybrid style gives you advantages he won't expect. He's trained to fight traditional Valorians." Lyra nodded. She wasn't nervous. She'd fought human marines, completed impossible courses, and pushed her body past every limit. This was just another challenge. They entered the arena from opposite sides. Thalrex wore traditional combat armor, designed to amplify his already considerable energy powers. He raised his hand in salute, his energy crackling visibly around him. Lyra returned the salute. The referee, a neutral combat master, called the start. Thalrex attacked immediately with a massive energy blast. It was the traditional opening move, meant to test his opponent's defenses. Most Valorians would counter with their own blast or raise an energy shield. Lyra did neither. She moved. Her human-trained legs launched her to the side at a speed no traditional Valorian could match. The blast hit where she'd been standing, scorching the arena floor. Before Thalrex could adjust, Lyra closed the distance between them. The general tried to hit her with a backhand powered by energy. Lyra ducked under it, using a boxing slip Jake had taught her. She drove her fist into Thalrex's ribs, channeling a small energy burst at the moment of impact. The hybrid strike hit with devastating effect. The general stumbled back, surprised. "You move like a human," he said, recovering quickly. "Let us see how that helps you against real power." He unleashed a barrage of energy attacks, each one powerful enough to seriously injure a normal Valorian. But Lyra had trained for this. She bobbed and weaved, using human footwork to stay just ahead of the blasts. When she couldn't dodge, she used minimal energy to deflect rather than the traditional full shield. Jake had taught her that efficiency mattered more than raw power. She waited for an opening. Thalrex was powerful but traditional. He stood mostly still when attacking, the Valorian way. It was dignified and proper, but it was also predictable. Lyra saw her chance. She sprinted directly at him, low and fast. The general tried to target her, but she was moving too erratically. At the last second, she slid under his guard like a baseball player sliding into home base, something no Valorian would ever think to do. Her leg sweep caught him completely off guard. His massive body went down hard. Before he could recover, Lyra was on him. She used a submission hold Jake had taught her, one that controlled his energy-throwing arm while putting pressure on his neck. "Yield," she said calmly. Thalrex struggled, trying to use his superior strength, but Lyra's technique was perfect. Every time he moved, she adjusted, keeping the hold tight. He tried to summon energy for a point-blank blast, but she was positioned so that any attack would hurt him as much as her. "Yield," she repeated. The arena was completely silent. No one could believe what they were seeing. The Empire's greatest general, defeated by the princess who couldn't even pass the basic trials. Finally, Thalrex tapped the ground 3 times, the universal sign of submission. Lyra released him immediately and stood, offering her hand to help him up. The general stared at her hand for a moment, then took it. As she pulled him to his feet, he shook his head in amazement. "You fight like nothing I have ever seen, like no Valorian has ever fought. How?" "I fight like a human," Lyra said, "and a Valorian. I am both now." The crowd erupted. Some cheered, some argued, but everyone was talking. King Vexthor stood in his viewing box, tears streaming down his face. His daughter had not just proven herself. She had shown a completely new path forward. That night, the king held a war council. General Thalrex, to his credit, listened carefully as Lyra and Jake explained human training methods. "We can adapt this for Valorian soldiers," Lyra said. "Teach them to use their bodies properly, combine physical technique with energy powers, create hybrid warriors." "How long would this take?" the king asked. "For a full battalion, 4 months of intensive training," Jake said. "But they'll be more effective than traditional forces, I guarantee it." Thalrex spoke up. "I will volunteer to be trained. If the princess can humble me, then I can learn from her methods." Other generals nodded. The princess had proven her worth in the most direct way possible. They would follow her lead. But celebrations were cut short. An alert came through. Krell forces had been spotted near the capital world. A major offensive was coming, and it would arrive in 2 weeks. 2 weeks is not enough time to train an army, Thalrex said grimly. Lyra looked at Jake, then at her father. Then I request permission to lead a strike team. Small, fast, using hybrid tactics. We hit them before they hit us. That is suicide, a general protested. Going to the enemy with untested methods. Human methods, Lyra corrected. Very tested, and very effective. King Vexthor looked at his daughter, seeing the warrior she had become. Assemble your team. Show us what human Valorian cooperation can accomplish. Show the Krell that this empire is not finished fighting. Lyra saluted. Yes, father. They will learn what happens when you underestimate the weak. In orbit above the planet, Krell ships prepared for invasion, confident that the declining Valorian empire would fall easily. They had no idea that everything was about to change. The strike team assembled in the military hangar. Lyra had personally selected each member. 20 Valorian warriors who had volunteered for accelerated hybrid training, and 10 human marines that Jake had called in from nearby colonies. They would have 1 week to train together before the Krell arrived. General Thalrex was among the volunteers. If he was going to support this new way of fighting, he needed to understand it completely. Other Valorians looked at him with surprise as he went through basic human conditioning exercises alongside younger soldiers. The human teacher does not make exceptions for rank, Thalrex said to one noble who questioned his participation. Neither will I. We learn by doing, not by watching. Jake pushed them hard. They had 1 week to learn what took Lyra months to master. He focused on the essentials: proper movement, efficient energy use, basic human combat techniques that could combine with Valorian powers. He taught them to think like humans, to use every advantage, to never give up. Katie worked with each volunteer to optimize their diet and recovery. She discovered that many Valorians had the same problem Lyra once had. They relied so much on their energy powers that their physical bodies were weaker than they should be. With proper nutrition and training, they could be so much more. The human Marines trained the Valorians in squad tactics. Humans fought as units, each member supporting the others. Traditional Valorians fought as individuals, each warrior trying to prove their own strength. The hybrid approach combined both, individual power working within team coordination. Cover your squad mate while they charge their attack, one Marine explained. Then they cover you while you advance. We call it leapfrogging. Simple, but it keeps everyone alive longer. The Krell attack came exactly when intelligence predicted. A massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the capital world, hundreds of ships, carrying thousands of warriors. The Krell were insectoid creatures, each one a living weapon with razor-sharp limbs and acidic blood. They believed in overwhelming force and had used it to conquer dozens of worlds. The Valorian fleet moved to engage, trying to buy time for planetary defenses. King Vexthor watched from the command center, his face grim. They were outnumbered 3-1. Even with every ship and soldier they had, it might not be enough. "Where is Lyra?" he asked. "Her strike team launched 10 minutes ago," an officer reported. "They're taking a stealth ship behind enemy lines." "Behind enemy lines? Why?" Jake, who stood nearby as an advisor, smiled. "Because that's what humans do when we're outmatched. We don't fight where the enemy expects. We make them fight on our terms." The strike team's ship slipped past the Krell fleet using human stealth technology. Their target was the command carrier, the massive vessel that coordinated the entire Krell invasion. Traditional Valorian tactics would never attempt something so risky. But human Marines had done similar operations dozens of times. It was dangerous, but it could change everything. 3 minutes to breach point, the pilot announced. Defenses are minimal. They're not expecting anyone to be crazy enough to attack their flagship. Lyra checked her team one final time. The Valorian warriors looked nervous but determined. The human Marines looked excited. Different species, different backgrounds, but they'd trained together and learned to trust each other. "Remember the plan," Lyra said. "We're not trying to destroy the ship. We're decapitating their command. Kill the Krell battle coordinator, and their fleet loses cohesion. They'll become a mob instead of an army." The ship latched onto the Krell carrier's hull. Cutting torches burned through the armor. The team dropped into the breach point. Weapons ready. Krell warriors swarmed them immediately. These were soldier drones, deadly, but not particularly smart. Lyra's team formed a defensive circle exactly as they'd practiced. Valorian energy blasts created a perimeter while human Marines fired precision shots through gaps. When Krell got too close, hybrid warriors used physical combat techniques to devastating effect. Thalrex fought beside a human Marine named Cole. The Marine would fire his weapon to stagger a Krell, then Thalrex would finish it with an energy-enhanced strike. They'd only trained together for a week, but they moved like partners who'd fought together for years. "Your human tactics are effective," Thalrex grunted between attacks. "Your energy blasts are pretty handy too," Cole responded, reloading quickly. "We make a good team." The strike team pushed deeper into the ship. Lyra led from the front, using her hybrid style to cut through defenders. Her armor's systems worked perfectly, enhancing both her physical abilities and her energy manipulation. She was faster and stronger than any Krell expected, and her unpredictable human-style movement made her nearly impossible to hit. They reached the command chamber. The Krell battle coordinator was there, a massive creature 3 times the size of a normal Krell. It was surrounded by elite guards, the smartest and deadliest warriors the Krell had. "We hit it together," Lyra said. "Valorians suppress the guards. Humans target the coordinator. Ready? Go!" The chamber erupted in violence. Energy blasts filled the air as Valorian warriors engaged the elite guards. Human Marines focused fire on the coordinator, their armor-piercing rounds punching through its thick carapace. The creature roared and tried to organize a defense, but it was overwhelmed by the coordinated assault. Lyra saw her opening. She sprinted across the chamber, dodging attacks with human agility. She jumped onto the coordinator's back, using enhanced leg strength, then drove her energy-charged blade directly into its skull. The creature convulsed once and collapsed. Without the coordinator, the Krell fleet immediately lost cohesion. Ship formations broke apart. Attack patterns became chaotic. The Valorian fleet, still outnumbered but now facing a disorganized enemy, pressed their advantage. The strike team fought their way back to their ship. They'd lost 3 Marines and 2 Valorian warriors, but everyone else made it. As they detached from the carrier and accelerated away, Lyra watched the Krell fleet scatter. Some ships retreated. Others continued attacking, but without coordination. The Valorian fleet was actually winning. King Vexthor watched in amazement as the battle turned. How did they do this? 30 soldiers changed an entire battle. That's what humans call a force multiplier, Jake explained. You don't need the biggest army if you're smarter about how you fight. One well-placed strike beats 1,000 random attacks. The victory was total. The Krell fleet was destroyed or driven off. For the first time in years, the Valorian Empire had won a decisive battle. When Lyra's team returned to the capital, they were greeted as heroes. But Lyra knew this was just the beginning. She stood before the king and his council the next day with a proposal. "We proved hybrid tactics work," she said. "But this was just one battle. We need to transform our entire military approach. I request permission to establish a training academy, bring in human instructors, combine our knowledge, create the next generation of warriors." "This goes against centuries of tradition," one noble protested. "We are Valorians. We should fight as Valorians have always fought." "And how has that worked?" Lyra asked bluntly. "We've lost world after world using traditional methods. It's time to admit that tradition alone won't save us. We need to adapt or die. King Vexthor stood. My daughter speaks truth. I approve her request. The Academy of the Bridge will be established, teaching both human and Valorian methods to any who wish to learn. Over the next year, the Academy grew. Hundreds of Valorians volunteered for training. Jake brought in more human instructors. Katie developed medical protocols that worked for multiple species. Even other alien races, hearing of the Valorian victory, sent representatives to observe. The war turned. Hybrid warriors pushed the Krell back world by world. Traditional Valorian forces, inspired by the success, began adopting some human tactics themselves. The empire that had been dying was now thriving. Lyra stood on the Academy training grounds one evening, watching a mixed group of humans and Valorians run through combat drills. They worked together seamlessly, each species' strengths covering the other's weaknesses. Jake joined her. Thinking about how far you've come? Thinking about how far we all have, Lyra said. A year and a half ago, I was the weak princess who couldn't pass basic trials. Now I command an academy that's changing the galaxy. You were never weak, Jake said. You just needed someone to show you a different path. And you needed someone to prove your methods could save more than just humans, Lyra replied. We saved each other. A young Valorian approached them, a female who looked similar to how Lyra had looked before her transformation. She was thin and small by Valorian standards, and she looked nervous. Commander Lyra? I was told you might accept me as a student, even though I failed the traditional trials. Lyra smiled, remembering herself not so long ago. What's your name? Kira, Commander. Kira, I failed the trials too. Failed completely, but I learned something important. Failure in one way doesn't mean failure in every way. Are you ready to work harder than you've ever worked before? Ready to hurt, to fail, and to get back up every single time? The young Valorian straightened. Yes, Commander. I am ready. Then welcome to the Academy. Report to Instructor Katie for assessment. Training starts tomorrow at dawn. As Kira hurried off, excited and nervous, Lyra looked at Jake. How many more are out there? How many people think they're weak just because they don't fit traditional standards? Thousands, Jake said. Maybe millions across the galaxy. But they're finding their way here. Finding a place where different doesn't mean broken. In the years that followed, the Academy of the Bridge became legendary. Warriors trained there fought in dozens of conflicts, always proving that cooperation beat separation. Species that had never spoken learned to work together. New tactics emerged from combining different cultures' approaches. Princess Lyra, once considered the weak failure of a dying empire, became Commander Lyra, founder of a new way of thinking about strength and warfare. She proved that weakness was often just undeveloped potential, that tradition should serve people instead of restricting them, and that the best solutions came from combining different perspectives. The Valorian Empire survived and eventually thrived. The Krell were pushed back and eventually sued for peace. And throughout the galaxy, people told the story of the alien king who gave his frail daughter to a human, and how that one desperate act changed everything. Because strength, they learned, wasn't about how you started. It was about refusing to stop growing, learning, and adapting. That was the human way. And now, it was everyone's way.